2 Champions League finals, goals in both, and Real Madrid just decided he is not worth protecting. Vinícius Júnior, the man who delivered ultimate European glory, twice. And when the board sat down and made their list of players they will not sell under any circumstances, 3 names went on it: Kylian Mbappe, Jude Bellingham, Fede Valverde. That is the whole list. You notice who is missing? The winger who dominated on the biggest nights of their season. Left off. Just like that. So here is what everyone is afraid to say out loud. Real Madrid might actually sell Vinícius Júnior to Arsenal. Not some cheap rumor spun out of nothing. A real, board-approved, money-on-the-table situation. And the reason it is happening is scarier than any transfer saga you have followed this decade. It comes down to one number that has been poisoning this relationship for several months. 7 million euros net. 20 million gross. That is the annual gap between what Madrid want to pay Vinícius and what Vinícius is demanding. 1 year. 12 months of 2 sides staring at each other over the same figure and refusing to blink. And now the clock is the enemy. His current terms expire June 30th, 2027. That leaves 12 months. You know what happens to a player with 12 months left who will not sign? He can walk out the door for free. Nothing. 0 euros for a Ballon d'Or candidate. That is the nightmare keeping Florentino Perez awake. Real Madrid has a clear pattern here. While Real Madrid prefers to manage squad departures on their terms, they have seen key stars leave on free transfers when contracts expire. Think about their history. When superstars leave the Santiago Bernabéu, they leave on the club's terms, generating massive fees that fund the next generation of talent. To let a prime asset depart without recouping a single euro would be a historic humiliation. Perez simply will not allow it. So in July 2026, the hierarchy took an unusual step for a club that usually begs its stars to stay. They pulled Vinícius's representatives into a room and gave them an ultimatum. We are not raising the offer. Not a single cent. And if you will not accept it, go find a club willing to pay our price. Read that as what it is. The most successful club in European history told its own icon to pack a bag. Cold, deliberate, done. So how does a relationship this valuable rot this fast? Subscribe to this channel and you will start catching these power struggles before the headlines do. Because this Vinícius standoff is unfolding behind closed doors right now. Now, who is circling? Arsenal, and they are not tiptoeing. On July 25th, reports surfaced that the club was actively exploring a blockbuster deal for Vinícius, watching those stalled Madrid talks like a hawk watches a wounded animal. By July 25th, the Arsenal board had already approved the pursuit at every level. Every level. That means the money has been signed off. And what money it is. £400,000 a week. Some reports push it to £401,500. That single agreement would make Vinícius the highest paid player in Arsenal's entire history. It would leapfrog Bukayo Saka, their homegrown golden boy, in one stroke of a pen. Think about what that says. A club built on wage discipline, ready to blow up its own pay structure for one man. That is not interest, that is obsession. Arsenal's interest was real, but Madrid's next move was more alarming. They did not sit on their hands, they acted. While Vinícius sat on holiday, refusing to drop his demands, his own club went out and bought his replacement. On July 27th, Real Madrid agreed personal terms and moved into the final stages of a deal for Yan Diomande. 19 years old, an Ivorian winger from RB Leipzig. The fee? A base fee between 115 million and 120 million euros, rising up to 135 million euros with add-ons. And where does Diomande play? Primarily on the right flank. His flank. Madrid backed up the threat with money. They spent up to 135 million euros preparing for a future without him. You do not spend that kind of money on a teenager to keep him on the bench. You buy him to start. That is a message written in 9 figures. Your employer just hired the person meant to take your job, and they did it while your current agreement was still active. How does that make you feel? Disrespected? Unvalued? No question. If this is landing the way I think it is, take 1 second to hit that like button. It genuinely pushes this to more people who have been screaming about this saga with nobody listening. And the coaching chaos behind all this? It is uglier than most people realize. In late May 2025, Real Madrid hand the job to Xabi Alonso, bright young manager, big future, the club's darling, except Vinícius could not stand playing under him. The rift got so deep that Vinícius reportedly told the club flat out he would not sign a new extension while Alonso stayed in charge. Then came the Clásico. Alonso subbed him off, and Vinícius did not sit on the bench, did not shake a hand, did not fake a smile. He walked straight down the tunnel in front of everyone. Public dissent, naked and unfiltered, and it worked, in a way. On January 12, 2026, after a 3-2 loss to Barcelona in the Supercopa, Madrid sacked Alonso. 7 months. That is all he got. Álvaro Arbeloa stepped in as caretaker to hold the wheel, so the player got his wish. The manager he hated? Gone. Out the door. You would think that fixes everything, right? You would think they could finally move forward. It fixed nothing, because the man Madrid brought in to replace the whole mess arrived with 3 years of authority and a completely different agenda. Jose Mourinho announced June 11, 2026, on a 3-year deal that kicked in July 13th, right after Florentino Perez won re-election as president. And this is what makes the whole situation so tangled. Mourinho actually wants Vinícius. Reports say he views him as a core part of his plans. So now you have got a manager fighting to keep the very player the board is trying to shove out the door. The coach and the boardroom pulling in opposite directions over the same man. How do you sell a player your own manager just told you he needs? That is the knot Madrid tied for themselves. Think about Mourinho's tactical history. He loves a transition monster. He built his famous 12-12 Real Madrid side around the counter-attacking pace of Cristiano Ronaldo, and he sees that exact same devastating threat in Vinícius. Mourinho knows that in modern football, a winger who turns defense into an open-field attack in 3 seconds is a cheat code. He wants to build his entire offensive structure around him. But the executives have their eyes on the financial ledger, creating an ideological war between the dugout and the boardroom. And while all this civil war plays out in Spain, there is €1 billion sitting on a table in Saudi Arabia. Al Ahly, the Saudi Pro League club, put a 5-year package worth €1 billion in front of Vinícius. $1 billion. Life-changing, generation-changing, dynasty-building money. And you know what he did with it? He said not yet. Vinícius wants to stay in Europe. He wants the Champions League nights, the Clásicos, the biggest stage the sport can offer. €1 billion could not drag him out of European football. That tells you everything about what this player values. For him, the money mattered less than respect, position, and standing at the top of the game, which is exactly why the wage fight cut so deep. This 8-figure gap became a matter of pride, not payroll. Now the math. The terrifying, unforgiving math. Real Madrid want a minimum of €160 million to sell him. That is roughly £136 million. Their line in the sand. But that number has a crack in it. Reports confirm that Madrid's €160 million valuation is a non-negotiable floor, refusing to accept anything lower. That gap keeps shrinking, a large chunk of leverage evaporating because of a ticking clock. Every week, Vinícius refuses to sign. His price to the buyer falls and Madrid's panic rises. And that is what makes selling to Arsenal suddenly logical. Getting a huge fee in the bank beats losing a top asset for free next June. Cold, brutal accounting. The kind that ends love affairs between clubs and legends. And Vinícius knows the leverage cuts both ways. In mid-July, while his teammates reported back to Valdebebas for preseason, he did not show. He stayed on holiday. Delayed his return on purpose so his representatives could keep grinding through those high-stakes talks. A boycott dressed up as a vacation. Each day away reminded Madrid of what they would miss. A power move. Risky, defiant, and completely on brand for a player with a history of bold moments. So where does that leave us? A club that refuses to lose players for free, staring down the exact scenario they built their entire philosophy to prevent. A player who turned down €1 billion but will not budge on those 7 figures. A manager begging to keep him. A board telling him to leave. A replacement already bought and paid for. And a London club with a record-breaking contract sitting loaded and ready. Nobody has agreed to anything yet. Let us be clear about that. Vinícius has not handed in a transfer request. He has not shaken hands with Arsenal. His first choice is still to stay in Madrid if they meet his wage demands. Arsenal are exploring, inquiring, circling. But the fact that a serious sale is even on the table for the very player who delivered their greatest modern moments? That is the story. That is the fracture. A club that once treated this man as the future of the badge now treats him as an expiring asset they need to cash before the deadline. 10 million euros. That is the number that could end it all. Not talent, not glory. A wage gap smaller than the fee they would pay for a teenage backup. That is how legends leave. Not in a blaze, in a spreadsheet. Cold, calculated, done. If this saga hit you the way it hit me, watching a club weigh a hero against a balance sheet, then like this video and subscribe. The next twist in this standoff is coming fast, and you are going to want to be here when it breaks.